Thanks, Colin. Good afternoon, everybody. I'll just begin by giving a timeline of what's transpired with our team specifically on this road trip. Our team departed for Edmonton from Toronto on Sunday afternoon, arrived in Edmonton on Sunday night, following the NHLPA health and safety protocols. Everybody in the traveling party, players and staff, had PCR nasal swab tests performed on Monday morning in Edmonton. All of those tests returned as negative. We had no players with any symptoms or any illness on Monday. Played the game on Tuesday night in Edmonton. We're informed that our game against Calgary was going to be postponed. Stayed an additional night in Edmonton on Tuesday night than scheduled, and then flew to Vancouver on Wednesday. It was a scheduled off day for our team. So flew here, checked into the hotel. Thursday morning was our next scheduled testing day, which we performed here in Vancouver. And then we had a practice on Thursday afternoon. Very early yesterday morning, Vancouver time, received a call from our medical director, Dr. Noah Foreman, informing me that two of our players had tested positive for COVID on the previous day's PCR tests that were performed in Vancouver. And we immediately then canceled practice yesterday here in Vancouver at UBC and performed another round of PCR testing and rapid antigen testing on our players and staff on the trip, in addition to the Air Canada flight crew. And were informed last night that we had two additional players their PCR tests had returned positive results, and all four players have been placed into COVID protocol. All that was communicated with the NHL. Two of the four players are entirely asymptomatic. One of the four had some mild symptoms at the beginning, and those have dissipated, and one has some fever and chills and body aches. So that is where we stand at this moment. We came into today ready to play tonight, and were informed a few hours ago that our game tonight against Vancouver and our game tomorrow night in Seattle would be postponed. So we're now in Vancouver still, awaiting the results of our PCR tests that were done very early this morning in preparation for the game tonight. And once we have the results of those, anybody who's tested negative today will return to Toronto on the team charter. All of our rapid antigen tests that were performed this morning on all of our traveling party and players came back as negative, but we'll wait for the PCR test to be returned. And then anyone who's negative will return to Toronto on the team charter. Anybody returning a positive result, we're still coordinating travel for those players back to Toronto. So that's all the information I have and to share with you. And at this point, I'll turn it over to questions.
Thanks, Kyle. First up, we'll go to Kevin McGran with the Toronto Star. Go ahead, Kevin.
Hey, Kyle, thanks for doing this. I just want to make sure you did antigen testing or rapid antigen and PCR basically on everybody over the last couple of days?
Yes.
Okay. And you told us how they're feeling. I just wonder what's going through your mind as you think about the players and Christmas, and you think about your team and the season at this point.
That's a good question, Kevin. I haven't had a whole lot of time to, fortunately, these have been our first positives that we dealt with, even going back to the 2020 summer bubble when it was in Toronto for us. And so, I think as it's gone on, and especially as different variants have come up, and you see how quickly this specific one spreads, I think you're naive if you think it's going to avoid a team of 50 or 20 to 25 players who are traveling at any one time, plus all the staff that, especially as you go to different parts of the country and the continent where regulations are very different, that you're going to avoid coming into contact with this. So, we've kind of, I think our players deserve a lot of credit. They've been excellent throughout this entire thing. And I just, I'm happy that they're all feeling quite well, and we're just trying to get through every day as healthy as possible. So when it comes to Christmas, I think unfortunately, part of this line of work is that you're going to be, because it's in the winter, you're going to miss various different things. Same as if you're in football or baseball, you're going to miss different summer holidays. So it's unfortunate, but we'll try to do everything we can to get everybody with their family during the holidays.
Another one, can you give us an update on what's going on with the Marlies as well?
I can. The Marlies, as of this morning's PCR test coming off of their road trip last weekend, where they went Springfield, Bridgeport, Providence. I believe they're up to 10 players that have tested positive for COVID-19, which is an outbreak, and all players and staff are isolating per the Toronto Public Health guidelines for 10 days.
Next up, we'll go to David Alter with the Hockey News. Go ahead, David.
Hey, Kyle. I'm just wondering, when you're going through this type of situation, what the conversations with the league were like about trying to postpone this game, because the announcement came rather late, even though it kind of seemed like the situation was, for lack of a better way of putting it, kind of dire. Like, you talk to the other team and what's happening with their situation. Are you guys lobbying? Like, what's going on over there?
I don't think there was any lobbying, David. I think the league is. I know that people look at it and they've been handled different ways throughout the season. I mean, we've played against teams that were going through different. I mean, the Islanders game in particular, just about a month ago, jumps out as probably the other situation where we played a team that was going through the onset of an outbreak, and then they had their season paused, I think, a game later. So I have talked to the other GMs of, to Ken Holland in Edmonton, because they're going into Seattle and there are different border complications that you're trying to sort out. And then I've talked a number of times yesterday to Jim Rutherford just about testing and making sure that everything was going to be done and tests were going to be returned in time for the game today. I think everybody, wants to avoid any positives as we can, in an attempt to slow any spread, regardless of what these symptoms may be, or whether the virus is getting to a point where the impact is less deadly or creating less severe illness. I think that's what we all hope for as this goes along, is that is the outcome at some point as it continues to transform itself and go into different variants and vaccination rates and booster rates go up. So I think with us, it's just been trying to learn our way through it, because it was the first time we've encountered it, and try to do all that we can to keep our group testing negative and being able to get home.
Next up, we'll go to Terry Koshan with the Toronto Sun. Go ahead, Terry.
Hey, Kyle, thanks for the time today. Is this any more jarring, given the fact that just being around the team like we have been, players and coaching staff seem to be following protocols anyway, but before even the enhanced protocols were instituted officially by the league this week, and that things were being followed by your guys and the staff. So is it any more jarring that it still found its way in, or how do you see that?
Oh, I guess, I mean, like I said in David's question, Terry, I think our players have been outstanding, in each of the 3 seasons now that we've operated under various different protocols. I mean, the bubble was a different beast because you were in a bubble, and it was sort of, it was going to be kept out. But last season and this season, our players, anything that we've asked them to do, they've largely handled it on their own. So I think it's unfortunate that despite the, independently what our guys have done to stay healthy, stay in the lineup, stay avoiding coming into contact with the virus to spread to each other and to people in the community and their families. Yeah, I mean, it's disappointing. I think given, what is known so far about the Omicron variant, that I'm hopeful that the early data that we get is great, and that it's more transmissible, which is not great. But I'm hopeful that it's creates less illness and less hospitalization, less death as it looks, but I don't pretend to be an epidemiologist or doctor or anything like that. I'm just optimistic and hopeful.
I just one last one for me, Kyle. I guess I know the answer, but you guys will get home later today, and I suppose just an hour by hour, day by day process from there, isn't it?
Yeah, the league, when I spoke to Deputy Commissioner Daly, he had said that our next 2 games were postponed, but that we were not being shut down per se. So I think a lot of it, we've got a test results or batch of test results coming back here today at should be in the next couple of hours before we can even get to the airport and go. But that'll be very instructive, obviously, of where we're at and how we've been able to come through the first couple of days.
Next up, we'll go to Jonas Siegel with The Athletic. Go ahead, Jonas.
Hey, Kyle, I'm just wondering what the process is like for getting the players who are in protocol home.
We're just learning how to go through all that, Jonas, and trying to ensure that, obviously they can't go on commercial flights. So, it wouldn't be responsible, nearly anywhere close to responsible for us to do that. So we're trying to work through all the options to make sure that we're abiding by every rule and doing things properly to get them from Vancouver to Toronto here in the next day or so, and then get them into isolation there in Toronto. But it's an evolving process. Our first time having to go through it, so we're trying to make sure that we're abiding by every single rule and we're not putting anybody else at risk. That because as soon as they leave the hotel here and leave their rooms, just make sure that we're doing everything right, not to expose anybody further.
Well, and what's your sense on how those guys are doing, how the team's doing? Like, did you speak to the group to kind of gauge how everyone is handling this?
We haven't since we canceled practice yesterday. We haven't been together as a group, but so we've just been communicating largely in large group messages or emails and such. But it seems, the 4 guys, I've spoken to them each a number of times, all seem to be in good spirits and doing well. The rest of the team, I saw some of the players this morning at the rink. There's a very optional skate for the players who all tested negative yesterday and had a negative antigen this morning, rapid antigen this morning, where they could go to the rink to get on the ice for the first time since Thursday in preparation for the game today before it was postponed. And I think everyone's a little bit on edge and unsure of what's happening. And I know there've been lots of discussions between the players and the NHLPA and the league as well, which I'm not privy to, but I know that has a lot of different things on top of mind for the players. I think most notably for our guys was the upcoming Seattle trip and what happens if we're in Seattle and there's a positive test there and you've got to cross a border and you're positive. But that's obviously, that's not a concern now with the game tomorrow being postponed.
We'll take a few more here. We'll go to Luke Fox with Sportsnet. Go ahead, Luke.
Hi, Kyle. Thanks for doing this. Just with Austin already named to Team USA and you have a number of other players who'd be in contention for their national teams, what are your feelings about sending Maple Leafs to the Olympics?
That's a tough one for me, Luke. I think that's those athletes have worked their entire life to be in consideration to go to the Olympics, especially, this era of player, basically their whole life that they've grown up, the best players, save for 2018, have been at the Olympics, and it's always been a great event and something that they all aspire to when you talk to them. So, that's going to be their individual choice. I don't think it's our place to really step in to the aspirations of an athlete that's worked a long time towards that. And I know that this is the professional athletes that goes a lot different than the amateur athletes and in terms of the work put in and different factors. But I think for us to have a strong opinion on either way would be a disservice to the aspirations of our players.
And do you have any desire, or has there been any discussion to just hit pause on the league entirely? Has that been brought up?
Has not been brought up to us. I'm hopeful that that's not necessary, but I'm also, I think, as we've all learned as we've gone through this, for the last almost 2 years. Every day is a new day, and it's impossible to say what tomorrow is going to bring in terms of the evolution of this virus and what we can do to get out from all the various different encumbrances and restrictions that it places on our lives. So, my desire is that we're all working towards a place optimistically where we can get back to life as it was, 2 years ago at this time. So I'm generally optimistic. That's not a statement on public health or my own or anything politically. It's just I'm just optimistic that we'll get back to that spot, and think everyone in the world will be happier when we do. So I sure hope we don't have to pause or delay, but if it's in the best interest of health and safety of the players and the fans and the public in general, I'm sure that the league will make the right decision.
We'll take 3 more questions here. We'll go to Kevin McGran, Toronto Star. Go ahead, Kevin.
I don't mean to be callous with this question, but it seems to be like a public growing sentiment out there that if the players are vaccinated and asymptomatic or mildly symptomatic, and I'm not talking just about your players, but across the league, why can't they just play? Like, what are doctors saying to that? If they're really not that bad, why can't they play?
I'm very tentative to be definitive on this one, Kevin, because I get a little bit both ways when it's very doom and gloom and when it's overly optimistic. I think it's best to kind of wait and see the impact on it. My hope is that with coronavirus, and I think where it shifts from being a pandemic to endemic is that you have less severe, because of vaccinations and because of different precautions and because of different protections that people build up or have, that we eventually treat it like we would treat someone who has strep throat on our team or someone who has the flu on their team. And I don't think in either of those cases, well, I know we wouldn't have those players participating. And we had Nick Ritchie was ill last weekend. He didn't play on Tuesday. It was a non-COVID related illness. He didn't travel with the team and didn't play while he was ill. Regarding asymptomatic players, there's so many various different things, and there's nothing definitive about what an asymptomatic capacity to transmit a different virus or various things like that. So I think when I get skeptical when people get definitive about these things and the impacts of them, when I still think all of us are trying to learn as much as we can. So I don't mean to evade the question. I just am trying to be as realistic as possible and basically say, I don't know. But I sure hope we come to a time when there's everyone who's asymptomatic of everything is eligible to play and attend games and live life again.
And the last 2 questions here, we'll go to David Alter with the Hockey News. Go ahead, David.
Hey, Kyle, I just want to clarify what you said off the top. Is it my understanding that you're still awaiting the results, the PCR results for today? And is that before you guys go home, just so that you have a better, clear indication if the list gets added or removed or whatever the case before you go home?
Yeah, that's correct, David. We don't want to put anybody that is testing positive, even if they're asymptomatic, onto an aircraft to protect the other players and to protect the staff that are on the aircraft. We just think it's the right and fair thing to do to wait until we get these results later today. They said they were going to be back. We had to test very early this morning. Our players did, and staff, in order to have them back in time for what the scheduled game time was, which was 4 Pacific. So before, they said that by 3:00 we should have the results. And then once we have those, we'll chart our course back home.
And the last one here, we'll go to Jonas Siegel with The Athletic. Go ahead, Jonas.
Hey, Kyle, it's probably premature, but do you have any sense on how you get these games back into the schedule at some point?
No, I don't. But I think I hate when we have games postponed, and I understand why. And so I just would like us to play hockey as much as we can for a number of reasons. It's what we all do. It's what you all cover. It's the players play and what the fans come to see. So I think I hate when anything is postponed, but the reality now is that we just have basically it postpones a trip for us, even though we've been out here for this is our 7th day from last Sunday through to today. So, we're just gonna, when it was the Calgary one-off postponed and we were gonna have to make that game up, that was looming as a tough one with our schedule to see where we would do a one-off game to Calgary. Now we know we're going to have Calgary, Vancouver, Seattle away to make up. So I haven't had any indication yet. I think that'll be determined more by how the next couple of days go with the rest of the league and what games can get in and how we proceed. But I think the one thing that the league has shown over the last 2 years is that they can adapt and make different things happen and find a way to get as much as we can in and get the playoffs and Stanley Cup awarded.